I want a tank. What should I play? Death Knight! How about Death Knight?
But you need rage.
Rage? Bear then. I like bear. Big and fluffy and tough as a rock.
But you want a shield.
Nah, I want a brew.
You could charge in.
I can leap in.
But shield slamming them in the face?
Captain America?
No, goddammit, a warrior. The OG tank. Don't pff me. Just take the damn talents, covenants, rotations, soulbinds, and legendaries.
That's quite a list. Glad there's nothing
And more!
And speaking of a good transition into an unrelated topic, please click the bell thingy and the subscribe button. I think you kind of have to do it in the other order though. It does actually help us a lot, and we do say this in every video, but that because it's so stupid that it still matters, but it does matter. YouTube algorithm is very smart these days, and it will only show you the videos that it thinks you are interested in. And if you like some of our other content, like tier lists or podcasts, or maybe our notifications for when we stream, which apparently some of you get only 6 days after we stream, I mean, that's a little bit weird, right? Plus, it also helps the video being pushed to more people, and that does better for us, and that really helps us out. If you just take like 2 seconds to like do click, click, 2 clicks, you would have done it like 20 times by now, so it doesn't really hurt that much. Of course, if you like our stuff. Thank you very much. Now let's check some Prot Warrior talents. Transition! On the first row, Devastator is the best option to take. Some of you might be wondering as to why this is better than simply using Devastate and getting something else here. The answer is simple, but maybe not straightforward. Playing your rotation properly, you never not have an important button to use. Buttons such as Thunderclap, Revenge procs, Shield Slams when they get reset, mitigation spells, and so on. There's a lot of buttons. Devastate is just not a high impact button and has a lower value as a global cast ability when you could be pressing something else. If you can delegate its role to something passive that works in the background, you create more value in your rotation. Not to mention, you will be stacking haste as much as you can, and that your rotation will speed up so much that further giving you more things to press at a certain time is going to be crazy. Take Devastator. For the second row, all options are viable. Double Time will be your most used pick here. It has tremendous value in raid scenarios where you are either knocked back a lot, have to drop a boss mechanic, have to pick up ads, and so on. Plus, the other options don't have a good place. Options such as Rumbling Earth, which clearly gets value in mythic dungeons when using Shockwave on groups of enemies at a time. This can come in handy in high keys maybe, where constantly tanking large packs of mobs can benefit from as many AoE stuns as possible to either reduce incoming damage, to open up the ability to kite, and so on. The utility is specific, since if you don't use Shockwave on cooldown, you aren't getting use out of this option and might be better off with Stormbolt as a separate long-range short cooldown. Stun. And that's actually what we will recommend you pick anyway, Stormbolt. This further enlarges your utility kit and gives you a prioritized crowd control option, which is very useful in dungeon encounters. Ultimately, the option you pick is down to you, or maybe the legendary you have. Reprisal. Meanwhile, on the level 30 row, options, Booming Voice will be your default pick here. This will turn Demo Shout into a much more important cooldown. If you didn't press it on cooldown before, you will have to do it now. The rage generation and damage increase are both going to make Demo Shout a not only versatile cooldown, but a very efficient one. You could swap to Dragon Roar for more AoE burst damage and Snap Threat, but we really do not recommend it since it falls short behind the other two, and with proper play, you won't need this particular talent anyway. Best Served Cold can do the most overall damage on the row and is an option for Mythic Plus, with a few disclaimers. Outside legendaries, Reprisal, this is a worse option than the other two, since not only does it not generate rage, If you opt to use its effect for normal cast as well, you lose rage, damage being its only upside. However, with the Reprisal legendary, which we will discuss later in the video, it becomes a major bonus to your kit, offsetting maybe the biggest issue with Prot warriors when compared to their counterparts: damage output. Next up, for the fourth row, Crackling Thunder will be another default choice for all content. Thunderclap is a spell you will use pretty much on cooldown anyway, and it having a larger radius and a more potent slow is just better in any AoE scenarios. There are a few raid fights like Sun King and Council where adds are fairly spread out, and getting aggro on all as fast as possible is easier with talents like Crackling Thunder. Otherwise, be a good boy and just jump farther. Yeah, Bounding Stride baby, my personal favorite. Normally this could be your raid default, since outside of a few specific fights, maybe even during those, it pays to have a buff to your mobility. There are always things you need to take out of the raid. Jump to pick up adds, zigzag around the room, and being able to do it faster just makes it better. Plus, this is the only talent on this row with a realistic application during raids. Level 40 row, Indomitable. For years, Prot warriors asked for a more sustained option to at least be in line with the other tanks. Indomitable is just that, and with the added 10% extra max health, surviving magic damage attacks, which are the bane for most tanks, will be less painful. Outside of this, the sustain is passive, rewards proper rage generation and spending, and makes spells like Ignore Pain a bit more valuable. On the level 45 row, you can pick between two options. Into the Fray will be your best raiding choice. Although it has been nerfed, the haste gains are still the best for single target performance, and Prot warrior wants so much haste it's ridiculous. Plus, in a raid scenario, the max stacks on it is guaranteed with you, your co-tank, and the boss, and anywhere from 2 to more melee players pretty much assures 5 stacks. Ravager is your mythic plus option with the medium cooldown and rage generation. It helps not only holding your aggro in a pack, but also outputting respectable damage. The higher you climb in a key, the more this will be available for every pack that matters. And lastly, the tier 7 talent row that rounds up the two main builds you will be opting for. Bolster goes into your default build. It turns Last Stand into a mega cooldown, and unless things change dramatically on this row or on the side of the toolkit and design of the Prot warrior, this will likely remain the best option on the row, since the amount of block it offers cannot really be matched by almost any other defensives, save for an immunity possibly. Anger Management is your second option for the Reprisal build. Since the legendary gives you a massive uptime on shield block, Bolster becomes less valuable to the point where Anger Management takes its spot. Reducing the cooldown of Avatar makes this the best AoE DPS choice, since heavy repercussions would probably output more in single target, but that wouldn't be why you would take the talent anyway. Not only that, it also reduces the cooldown of Shield Wall, which is an offset to the strength loss by not going for the other legendary, the Wall. All in all, there are pros and cons to most options, and since a lot of them tie into the legendary you will be using, we will clarify the rest of the build in the aforementioned legendary section. It's hard to gauge the stat priority for Prot warriors and tanks in general. In the last video we saw strength at the top, making eye level by extension the best metric by which to judge gear quality. Obviously not every gear piece has strength on them, but on those that do have strength, the higher eye level the gear, the better. The one thing that won't change no matter what content you do is haste being the second best stat. This stat is so crucial for your kit that it sees its value being higher than that of strength and armor as well. Since your most important abilities have their uptime tied to your haste, and your rage generation is also influenced by how quick you attack, since you get more shield slam resets, makes this stat a godsend for both tankiness and damage output. After haste, it really depends on the content you do. In raids, versatility comes in second. Nothing new here. Versatility raises the floor of your AoE damage output, damage intake reduction, and healing you do. The stat is exactly what its name says, versatile. Mastery is next, and it influences your block mechanic. It of course adds attack power, which is never something to ignore, but Mastery critical block adds also what it says, critical blocking, which is maybe the actual thing you are looking for in a defensive conversation about the stat, aka when you critical block, you block twice the amount the normal blocks. Most of the damage you will take will always be from melee attacks, meaning block is one of the best ways to mitigate that. After block, you want crit, which outside of what you know it does, it also increases your parry chance. Parry essentially negates the entire melee hit if it actually procs, but the chance is way lower and cannot be directly influenced to be reliable. It becomes more reliable in dungeons since there are just more attacks happening in a shorter amount of time, where the stat actually averages out to be decent as a source of mitigation, even if still unreliable. And lastly, we have strength and armor. Both are important stats, but in terms of a one-on-one comparison, these stats lose out to the others. And the debate is made when you compare 1 point of strength to 1 point of haste, same for armor, on sources of stats that have strength and are not defined by eye level, aka consumables, buffs, and so on. This is to give you an idea of the value of consumables, socket, and so on. For dungeons, the priority is similar. After haste, versatility is next again, but this time crit comes right after, almost on equal standing. Based on the previous argument I made about AoE melee tanking, if you recall, it was 20 seconds ago. Mastery follows next, especially with the reprisal playstyle, with strength and armor still at the bottom. Mastery works a bit better this time since the reprisal legendary gives you a higher shield block uptime, making critical blocking a more often occurrence, hence the value of mastery being a bit higher here. Again, the stat priority is there to give you an idea, a point of reference if you will. Eye level obviously influences your choice, the existence of a socket will do as well, and there are still items with no strength and armor on them to consider. Not to mention the weapons and shields that fall into a separate category. All in all, hopefully you have a better understanding of what to aim for when it comes to gear. Weapon enchants are mostly aimed at damage output. Celestial Guidance is one exception since it offers a strength buff proc which has defensive properties as well, and the enchant is good all around. For a more specialized choice, Sinful Revelation will be your raid's answer for single target damage, while Lightless Force will be its AoE counterpart that you will want in Mythic Plus encounters. For your chest, pump some Eternal stats into it and attach a heavy Desolate Armor kit for the stamina. It's good, trust me. Lastly, the cloak is purely for defensive purposes, so Fortified Avoidance will be ideal for all that magic damage that trickles on you when the boss or prides do their AoE magic shenanigans. Gems and ring enchants will see quick jewel clusters and 10 out of haste respectively, since haste remains the undisputed champion of stats. And when equipping your potion utility belt, you can be a maverick and go for Phantom Fire in single target or Empowered Exorcisms for AoE, damage output that is. Or you can be standard, stress-free, with potions of spectral strength that work in all scenarios and provide you with a little bit of tankiness as well. Use the Spectral Flask of Power in all situations, and Shadow Core Oil is usually better for your weapon if you are using the DPS potions, or Shaded Sharpening Stones and Weight Stones if you will be using the Strength Potion. And since haste is clearly better than strength, feasts are not the best choice for you, so go with Aspic, the Tenebros Crown Roast kind. Did you think I would say don't go Necrolord? Because I most certainly am! Yeah, Kirin is still the best right now, with Night Fae being a competitive choice. Night Fae is something we only would recommend if your goal is to multi-spec and smash some keys, as Fury or Arms where damage output is way more preferred. Hence, Ancient Aftershock being your sweet summer crush, well, winter crush if we're gonna be lore accurate here. AoE damage, massive rage generation over time is super nice, with the added need to keep the pack, since raid bosses rarely move, in the effect. If you build your Fae Prot Warrior, Nia will be your raid option, going down the Nia Tools burst for the added damage output, while for Mythic Plus scenarios, as with most specs oriented towards damage output, Corraine will take the cake, cause first strike, baby! Don't get me wrong, Night Fae is not bad, it's at best competitive with Kyrian, but as far as tanking and surviving is concerned, it cannot hold a candle to rooting shit with Spear of Bastion. Not to mention, everyone and their mom is Night Fae, and Kyrians are in short supply. The damage and rage generation is instant, making its value be on demand. The root lets you kite, and the rage gen is self-explanatory. The strength of the Covenant comes from its Soulbind as well. Pelagos is a tank's best friend. Combat Meditation rewards you with tons of mastery. Let Go of the Past brings the always welcome magic damage reduction. But really, most of all will be the Phial of Serenity potion to heal and clear all debuffs. This is really one of the best things tanks got this expansion. Being able to clear bleeds, make certain pulls possible, clearing necrotic keeps you from either dying or having to run half the dungeon to drop the stacks and so on. Pelagos can be built with double potency slots or triple endurance. The best potency conduit by far is Piercing Verdict, but if you do need a second, Show Force is your AoE DPS option and Ashen Juggernaut your single target one, with the caveat of incorporating Execute successfully into your rotation without dying, which is more difficult than it may seem, so use it at your own peril for Prot Warrior anyway. If you go Night Fae, Destructive Reverberations is another good alternative. For Endurance, Stalwart Guardian and Unnerving Focus are still the top ones, and although you can take a third Endurance path on Pelagos, you probably shouldn't, since the Finesse ones are also very good. Both Inspiring Presence and Safeguard are amazing group defensives that are hard to replicate. The undisputed champion for tank trinkets is Blood Spatter Scale by far. It has an on-use effect that damages enemies and heals you based on the amount of targets hit, up to 5. The amount of healing is absurd, and it's in the form of an absorbed shield, making it incredibly effective. If you are pushing content difficult enough that can end up killing you, Splintered Heart of Alar is another potential boon, if you proc its cheat death somewhat regularly. The question is why you are proccing it. Is it because of a misplay you can work on to avoid? Because if you work on it, then the trinket will lose value. So if it procs because you are fucking up, then don't take it. Otherwise, it's probably only good when you're perfectly playing your rotation and you are still dying because probably the key or the boss is just hitting you way too hard, at which point, sure, use it, it's gonna be good. Otherwise, it's just a little bit of strength passively taking the spot of a trinket that would give you a more beneficial buff. Some more consistently valuable trinkets are Stone Legion's Heraldry and Anima Field Emitters. Both play into buffing your stats, versatility and haste respectively, which are your two best secondary stats. And if your aim is to pump out more damage, Dreadfire Vessel from Sire, Phial of Putrefaction from Plaguefall, and Hymnal of the Path from the World Quest are really good options. Yeah, freaking World Quest trinket is pumping! And here we are. First, let's address the elephant in the room. Reprisal has been buffed since our last Prot Warrior guide and is now pretty much build defining. When you charge or intervene, you get 6 seconds of shield block and a free revenge proc and 20 rage on top of what charge gives you. This is why you want double time first of all. Since the damage is so good, you can actually afford to pick Best Served Cold to finally fix the damage issue Prot was having. And with that, the added shield block uptime makes the Bolster talent pretty much a waste, hence why Anger Management is taken, consequently getting you more Avatar uptime, aka more damage still. All in all, Reprisal is ideally your Mythic plus Legendary, since the shield block uptime doesn't help as much in raids because 1. There are certain mechanics you want to mitigate that cannot be mitigated by shield block, B. You might not always want to intervene off cooldown, since intervene is a very strong defensive for your co-tank when they are actively tanking the boss, and lastly, nothing, I got nothing more. Moving on, the wall is actually what you want for your raid legendary and your default one if you don't want to use or don't have Reprisal yet. This makes your shield wall have a lot more uptime and turns you into a cooldown rotating tank. The build sees the standard talents, and if you haven't watched our last guide, you basically take whatever on the second row, Booming Voice and Bolster on the end row. This way, when you don't have shield block, you have wall. When you don't have wall, you have Bolster, and pretty much every time in between you will have a boomed up demo shout. For even more raw damage in AoE, but losing the defensive benefits, opt for Seismic Reverberations. It's not something we would recommend if you push high content, but if you are not and you just want to blast, the damage output of this one will be just right for Mythic Plus encounters. The opener remained standard. Cast Charge and Taunt on the same global. Use Avatar at the same time. Pop Shield Block followed by Shield Slam. Cast Demoralizing Shout if Booming Voice is talented. Thunderclap next, and then continue with the normal priority. At pool, you can essentially cast Charge, Taunt, and Avatar on the same global since they do not share the global cooldown. For the single target priority, the abilities in order will start with Avatar on cooldown once again, then use Demoralizing Shout if Booming Voice was talented, pop Spear of Bastion or Ancient Aftershock, cast Ravager here, cast Dragon Roar next if talented, use Shield Slam on cooldown, pop Thunderclap, cast Execute, use Revenge with the free procs or to prevent capping on rage if you don't need Ignore Pain. In AoE dungeon scenarios, you still use Spear of Bastion or Aftershock on cooldown, cast Ravager next on the list, Dragon Roar after, cast Revenge for damage, use Thunderclap when available, cast Shield Slam on cooldown. A note here, this is basically showcasing the rotation to optimize damage output and keeping aggro. If your damage is sufficient where you are not on the verge of losing threat, Shield Slam will be of a much higher priority since the raw rage generation of it is far superior, especially if you want to optimize survivability. If you want to get a better idea of your general mitigation, we covered them pretty neatly in our previous Prot Warrior guide, so this time we will talk a bit about the reprisal playstyle. The idea is to charge and intervene as much as possible to take advantage of the shield block uptime, the free revenge proc, and the 20 rage bonus you get. The mindset you want to be in sees the priority similar as before with an added caveat. Obviously, charging into a pack, considering you would be using reprisal for dungeons, will give you all of the bonuses up front. After that, you can combine it. 1. Intervene on an ally, ideally a melee, for a proc, but anyone that's close also works. 2. Leap out and charge in for a proc. 3. Shockwave, Spear of Bastion, or any other CC, move away and charge back in for a proc. 4. If the pack has casters or rage, and it has most of the time, you can take a few steps back and charge to them instead, making sure you expose your back to the mobs as little as possible, and this will generate another reprisal proc. The way you optimize your charges and intervene on cooldown will dictate how much uptime you will have on shield block, which is the main goal, but also how many revenge procs you get for a pretty good DPS output. The playstyle is not easy to optimize, and it will take practice. Moving around a lot will make the pack move as well, so taking consideration to not move shit away from your DPS is very important. Mwahi has a much more detailed section about this and everything Prot Warrior on his Icy Veins guide, and we recommend you guys take a good look at his guide if you want to further improve your Prot Warrior playstyle. And for some reason, he also agreed to help feedback our guide again. This either means he's a really cool dude or he is looking for reasons to tell me I'm not using Demo Shot on cooldown. Either way, thanks dude. You can catch him and a lot more Prot Brains in the Skyhold Discord community, where you will also find a lot more resources about Prot Warrior and help and answers to questions from big Prot Warrior brains. A special thank you to our patrons for supporting our channel and all of the content that we do. Thank you very much. If you do want to support us a little bit more, dear viewer, and you haven't checked our Patreon page just yet, the links to it will be down in the description. You'll have some goodies, some wallpapers, some other stuff, and you'll be supporting this, plus our podcast, plus our streams, plus our tier list. And of course, we do Patreon talk chats with all of our patrons. So if you guys want to chat and see exactly what's going on behind the scenes, check our Discord. Thanks for watching the video. See you next time.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.